Hello, and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And thank you so much for tuning in. I have another fascinating and fantastic guest with me today. His name is Dr. Albert Bramante. He is a seasoned talent agent with more than 2 decades of experience in the entertainment industry. He also has a Ph.D. in psychology, is a certified hypnotist and NLP practitioner who brings a unique blend of psychological insight and practical experience to his work. Albert's work is not limited to achieving remarkable success as a talent agent by securing roles for actors in a wide area of productions, including television, films, commercials, Broadway and off Broadway performances, but includes helping people in all walks of life adopt empowering mindsets, productive habits, and silence self limiting beliefs. Albert, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
You have such a fascinating background.
Thank you.
So I want you to explain, just tell us how you got into the industry to begin with. I mean, that's a kind of like a cutthroat industry, I think. And
It can be. It can be. I guess depending on the day and the perspective that you have, there are moments where it is cutthroat. There's also moments where it's amazing too.
Mhm.
So I really want to stress that out. So I got started into it because I initially was interested in a little bit of acting myself. I was in drama club in high school. I was involved in a lot of extracurricular activities in college that involved theater, and I took some, acting classes as electives in college. And I truly just enjoy the process of it.
Mhm.
And, and for me, I just enjoy being around creatives and just, in show business. And that's where I kind of like really thrived and really felt the most at home were with other actors and creatives. And I really wanted to stay there. And that's where I started, building up my business and building up my contacts and building up my network within the show business world. And 2004, I made the decision to open up my first company, my first talent management company. Initially, that's what I started out with, talent management, and then I transitioned to an agency in 2007, and been doing that ever since.
Wow. Okay, so then when did the interest in the psychology and the NLP and some of these other things that you studied and now
Sure.
added to your work?
Well, I was always interested in psychology ever since high school. I majored that, during my undergrad. My undergrad major was psychology. Did a minor in communication. That's where I took some of the theater, and then I also did my master's degree right after I received my bachelor's degree, and I specialized in my master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And so my interest in psychology is growing, and then my interest in performing arts kind of got rekindled
Mm.
a little bit, and that's when I started working as an actor. But I was also working full time, and then I got hired to be an instructor in 2003 at a community college, and realized how much I really love teaching.
Mm.
And so that kind of like brought that interest in mine. So I like to kind of do many things. That was like my whole thing. I like to keep busy. So this while I was teaching, while I was building up my teaching career, I was also pursuing the performing arts, and then I wanted to work as an agent more than anything in 2004. It's like I really want to work with actors. I want to mentor them. I want to guide them, and so that's when I started my first company in 2004, and then I made the decision I want to go back for my PhD. I was already like halfway there, and I made a promise to my grandmother when she was alive and to my family that I would get the PhD, be a doctor.
Hmm.
Now, medical school wasn't in the cards for me, but the next best thing would be okay, well, I could still be called doctor with a PhD.
Hmm.
So I didn't know where my company was going with the talent business at the time, and so I wanted an insurance policy. So, and having the PhD was important to me, and it was the goal of mine. So I'm like, I'm halfway there. Let me go enroll into a PhD program. So I enrolled in Walden University. I did there, enrolled in a PhD program in 2005 and graduated 2015. It took me a little bit longer than usual to get the PhD because I was also hired full time in the middle of this to be a tenure track professor at the community college I was working at.
Wow. So when did
Yeah,
you
so
sleep?
um, I never did really.
Oh.
I paid for it a little bit, but I never did.
Mhm.
So that was important, important to me. And then the hypnosis and NLP came in later.
Mhm.
While I initially was going to be a clinical psychologist, so when I enrolled into Walden's PhD program, I first was in the clinical psychology track. I
Mhm.
finished all the coursework that was required, took all the pathology classes, all the assessment classes. I was completely ready to go for my internship and practicum, but I never would have had enough time to do that because a practicum for PhD was 750 hours, and then the internship was another 2,000 hours.
Oh my God.
So that's like 18 months of full time work. There's no way I could have done that,
Wow.
in addition to everything else I was doing. That was first stuff. But the second thing is I started becoming less and less interested, and I didn't feel as aligned anymore in the clinical model or the medical model of pathology and psychology because it was keeping people really stuck in their symptom mode and their pathology mode
Mhm.
and really not handling or solving the problem. And it was like when I did my, and then I started to remember back to my studies in marriage and therapy. There was a lot of solution focus, like the work of Virginia Satir or Milton
Mhm.
Erickson, that people that are pioneers in the field of like solution focused therapy. And I really was aligned with those approaches even back then. Uh, here's a practical solution. Let's get in, let's solve it, and have you out of the therapy chair and less amount as possible. That was like always what I was drawn to. Not
Mhm.
let's sit and talk for years about this trauma and have you keep repeating it over and over again.
Mhm.
Now hypnosis and NLP, I became interested in that because of the solution focused, emphasis on, the less time as possible in therapy
Mhm.
to get the person really at the state that they need to, you know, cope on their own and then leave. And that was like I was like, this really resonates with me more than traditional psychology.
Mhm.
So I
So,
made the transition to research and educational psychology and completed my degree.
okay. So, could you explain? I mean, I know a lot of people, especially if they listen to this show, are familiar with, a little bit of neurology, neuroplasticity, that type of thing, and they have heard NLP before or heard a little bit about it. But for those who are listening for the first time who might not know exactly what NLP is, could you give us a little bit of a rundown and explain what it is and how it works and why it's so
So
effective?
it's really a system about modeling human excellence using language and simple exercises and tests to rewire our neurology and to
Hmm.
really strengthen some of the connections in our nervous system, in our neurons. And that's what we call neuroplasticity, which is kind of like rewiring.
Hmm.
It used to be believed the traditional model was like once you hit 30, it was like you were done. There was you had no hope at this point. It was just like, can't teach an, old dog new tricks mentality, which is the furthest thing from the truth,
Hmm.
and the actual truth. So we're always rewiring to the moment we die, really. If you think about it, we can always change, we can always rewire stuff. So it's kind of like developing a system of techniques to kind of, not to kind of, but to really just rewire our
Hmm.
nervous system using language, using imagery,
Hmm.
using, the power of imagination and visualization.
Hmm. So
And
I just
so,
have to I have to make a comment. I apologize for interrupting, but you're going to love this because I don't know if you know my background. I am a recovering physical therapist, and I graduated with my master's in PT. It was my second career in 1996. So yeah, it was a long time ago, but not that long ago. But when I was going through my PT program and we were going through all the neurology classes, we were told that this neuroplasticity this miracle of nature is what I call it, disappears at the age of 14. Not 30,
Wow.
14. I know. And I'm like, as a respiratory therapist, that was my first career. I worked in a neurotrauma unit. And so I saw a lot of head injury, brain injury, spinal cord injury, and saw how people could recover. And I thought, I think I want a rebate or I want my money back because this is just not true.
Yeah, and a lot of people recover, right, miraculously through having a severe injury, and they may not recover fully, but they learn to adapt, even if they
Mm-hmm.
don't fully recover everything back to 100% everything, but they can at least show a robust or significant improvement from their injuries, from
Mm-hmm.
their their trauma in a sense that has happened. But it requires a lot of both effort on their part and a lot of rehabilitation. So, and the same thing with NLP, like if we want to model excellence, you have to put the work in. And
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of it uses language. So the power of language. Now, I love language because I think words are so incredibly powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of like, something that really, is important to me is the power of words and language.
Mm-hmm. I'm glad you brought that up because I think people don't realize how important it is, even, negative self talk, or the things that we hear, from our friends, family, whatever, how those negative messages, our brain doesn't say, hey, this is right or this is wrong. It just takes it in and records it. And eventually, if you hear it often enough, you eventually believe it. And what you believe is what you become. So, this is kind of
Hmm.
like the antithesis of all of that. This is kind of like unwinding and really finding your power through the power of words and language and self talk.
Right. And that's what it really is. The power of self-talk is so important. And it's not just a language that you use outwardly to other people, but even
Hmm.
what you use internally. And that's what's important. Sorry, I'm just over here.
That's
But
okay.
that is a major thing. It's a language that we use to ourselves.
Hmm.
Um, so how you describe yourself is so important, and I talk a lot about that. That's like the biggest thing here. Are you describing yourself from a deficient mindset or empowering? Because a lot of times I work with artists, so a lot of times for some reason the idea of the starving artist, the struggling artist, is kind of romanticized, which is I'm not sure why or how, but a lot of people identify as I'm a starving artist or I'm a struggling artist, I'm a struggling actor.
Mm.
And when you do that self-talk, you're setting up a filter like, okay, I need to look for everything that's struggling. I need to keep that identity because our identity is so important. And the language you use also creates our own identity. So if we're identifying as being poor or being deficient or being handicapped in any way, we're going to live our lives in that fashion and interact with others and interact with ourselves in that way by being poor, being deficient. Because our brain, what we're doing is we're saying this, and our brain's saying, "Okay, I'm going to make it so."
Hmm. So, I'm trying to, at this point, make the connection between NLP as well as hypnosis because, in my own mind, they seem to be very similar in a lot of ways. Because, again, it's a way of repatterning, it's a way of interrupting the negative self talk. And when you talk about, like, the struggling artist or the struggling actor, how that actually is a label that they carry with them. And so then they become it. And then if they're
Mhm.
not struggling, like when they stop struggling or they become successful and are making, a good living, then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute, who am I now?
Yeah, and we're so wired to kind of keep our identity and hold on to it strongly, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's not serving us. Even if it's not serving us properly or well, it's like we're still going to hold on to it because we don't want to change. It's like that fear of change is popping up.
with the hypnosis, because that's kind of like I'm not, I think NLP is a guided type of methodology as well as hypnosis is as well, correct?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
does hypnosis work the same way um, with the nervous system, the impact on the brain as NLP? Or is there something, a subtle difference between the two and how
It's
maybe they might change the patterns?
it's very subtle, but they're very heavily related. You really can't do NLP without hypnosis, and really hypnosis without NLP, some sort of
Hmm.
NLP. It used to be believed back in the early, 80s and 70s and 80s there was a territorial war between
Of
the two.
course.
NLP was like, no, I don't, yeah, and then hypnosis is not. But I don't think they realize that they're both doing the same thing at the same, almost the same process.
Hmm.
The thing is with hypnosis, it's in the traditional sense, we're putting people into like a slightly altered state, whether it's like a flow state or a relaxed state. NLP, you don't really have to put somebody in that state to
Hmm.
do that type of work. You can have a regular conversation. And then even at the same time, you could also use hypnosis, which is, in an open eye waking state.
Hmm.
It's just getting someone to change a perception. If we can change someone's perception of something, that can be considered a hypnotic process. That can be considered or even an NLP process.
Hmm.
So, and what really makes it even interesting is if we can help someone change their perception and make it think they came up with the idea themselves,
Hmm.
which is what advertisers do all the time.
Hmm.
They'll do these creative ad processes, and then all of a sudden you may be thinking, I'm in the mood for this product or this food today.
Hmm.
In your mind, it came up as random, but it really wasn't random. It was by design
Hmm.
because it reached your subconscious mind.
Hmm. Yeah, and we all know what that's like. It's like, oh my gosh, I really need to buy that dress. Click.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I need to add to cart, and there you go. And that's why very often you'll find yourself if you go shopping, if you don't really have a set objective, you'll start buying stuff you didn't even know you needed.
Hmm.
And because again, it's all about and you think it's what you want, but what you really find is like a lot of these sites have these little subconscious you know words and phrases that will activate your subconscious mind.
Hmm. So I understand, and I learned this a little while back, that a lot of the advertisers have actually done intense study into psychology, into
Yes.
how to get that person's attention.
Yeah. 100. It is 100% psychology, and
Hmm.
especially influence. So that's what it is. The biggest trap that advertisers use, and I can tell the listeners can most identify this, is the scarcity mindset, which is um, act now. This deal will only be available in the next 15 minutes. We're going out of business. So supplies are limited. You may be too late when you call, but the
Hmm.
actual reality is if you call a year later and they're still in stock, it's and because they even get like spam email where like act now, and they're a year old, and I'll click on the site and this product's still there.
Hmm. Yeah, I know. One of my friends turned me on to a site, a clothing site. And I was like, oh, it looks interesting, but, and she says, oh, well, believe me, you're going to be getting plenty of, notifications. And she was right. But the good news is I have not succumbed.
Yeah. Well, once you know that, okay, they're not succumb. Because the one thing that we're so wired to is that act now, act fast. Because it's that fear of missing out. It misses that channel because we have a natural tendency to not want to miss out on anything important.
Hmm.
And advertisers know that, that fear of missing out, and they'll target that. Another thing that salespeople do, and this is a trap that's very easily fallen into, the likability trap to make, it appear that they want to be your friend.
Mm.
And they'll flatter you,
Hmm.
especially live that, tell you how wonderful you are and all of this. And even now, like, I'll laugh when somebody's like, if I'm walking around New York City and someone's trying to sell me something and start flattering them. Like, in my head, I'm like, wow, they're laying it out thick. Good. Okay, keep going. And I'm, you know, it's funny to me because it's like sometimes I'll even tell them like, I'll pull them aside. I'm like, I like that. Do that more for the next time. Next person you see. And they're a little shocked by it. I'm like, because I know what they're doing.
Hmm. Are they
Um,
surprised when they get that reaction from
yeah,
you?
yeah, because they think, okay, I'm just because the average person wouldn't know it.
Right.
They would think, oh, what a great person, oh, this person seems so nice, and I'm going to do a favor for this person naturally. Another another big trap for advertisers or marketers, the free gift,
Oh.
the the free seminar,
Hmm.
that's not free.
Hmm.
Or you know, marketers do this all the time. People go to Costco to free samples. And they're not doing it for the goodness of the heart. What they're doing is to get your appetite ramped up so that you can go buy more.
Hmm. It's
And
evil.
most likely that's successful. It is conniving.
Hmm.
But that's another thing to be trapped too if you see these generosity like the free stuff.
Hmm.
Here, come in and have a free drink on us. It's a trap.
Hmm.
I mean, once you know it's a trap, you can still take advantage of it, but just know it's a trap.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
knowledge is power, and when you see it coming, you can
yeah,
make that, informed decision of, I know this
maybe you
isn't
still want to
real.
buy it. No, you still want to buy the product, great, but at least know that it may not be always your choice. It's like by design to
Hmm.
get you to buy that. Another technique that I'm sure everybody's familiar are upsells. You buy one
Oh.
product online, and then you're taken to another page.
Hmm.
It's like you really need this, and and most of the time, because the psychology behind it is like we've already obligated ourselves to buying it. What more? No, let me just add on to it.
Hmm.
And then you don't even think about it. Next thing you know, you're spending 3, 4 times the amount that you initially thought were to do. So be careful about that, like $7 product that you see online or email.
Hmm.
Buy with my sister for $7. Like, no, you're going to go through about 3, 4 sequences, and then you're going to use like a 500 or 600 or $1,000 package at the end, which is
Hmm.
what they really want you to buy.
Hmm.
So these are just simple, trips, but that's using NLP. That's
Hmm.
using hypnosis right there, targeting to the pressing the human buttons of a buyer psychology in a sense. So it's just by being a little bit more of a wise consumer.
Hmm. Hmm. Good to know. I'm sure that everybody right now is thinking about how many times they click that button and wish that they hadn't. But yeah, you're right. Knowledge is power. And when you can see what's happening, then you can make, a decision based on what your needs really are, not what they want you to do.
Yeah, and a lot of times people will feel like that buyer's remorse after they've already
Hmm.
checked out and they don't get their bill. It's like, well, when did I do that?
Yeah. I want to go back to, okay, just that phrase that I said, when, like what they want you to do. And this is kind of off the subject, but it really isn't, because, I am a martial artist. Those really are my toys in the background. And one thing that drives me absolutely crazy, yeah, and I'm a black belt, not that that's, that big of a deal, but there are a couple of other higher ranking students at about my level when they're working with students who are lower belts. When they say this, I swear my ears start to bleed. They will say to the student, I want you to do, and then we'll, show them the technique or whatever it is that they want. And I just sit there and I cringe because it's like, you don't say that to somebody, what I want you to do, because I don't care what you want. I
Right.
want to do what I want to do.
And we fall into that rebellion. It's called psychological reactance, where it's like, you're not going to tell me what to do. And then we start like, I'll do the opposite. If
Hmm.
anybody who's listening who's a parent,
Right.
you tell your child one thing, they're going to do the other thing. So the idea is, I suggest you do this, or I recommend this, or
Hmm.
you might want to look into this, or I wonder if you'll do this. Um, or you'll find you'll want to do this. That's a
Hmm.
there's something and I'll use an NLP thing called an embedded command,
Hmm.
which is a subtle way of telling somebody what to do. Yeah, I wonder when you'll find that this is going to be very helpful for you. I wonder when you'll find that this technique will be valuable to you, this martial arts technique.
Hmm.
So what you're doing is you're, like kind of a roundabout way, still telling them what to do, but in a softer way,
Hmm.
to a point where most people are going to comply to that because they say, you need to do this. You're not going to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's the mentality is what you were saying with the martial arts. No, you don't. I suggest, or
Hmm.
this is what some people have done in this situation.
Hmm. Well, and that's giving them a choice to make their own decision if they want to. And I don't know if you're familiar with Feldenkrais, but I am a Feldenkrais practitioner, and we work on the neuroplasticity through movement. That's
Hmm.
basically how we do it, gentle movement. And I'll never forget in my training when there were two guys, and one of them said to the other, he says, "Well, I want you to do this because I want you to experience this." And of course, the guy says, "Well, I don't want to experience it." And they got into this tiff. I mean, it was, as an observer, it was very fascinating and amusing in a way to watch, but it's like, but
Hmm.
I want you to feel what I felt. And he says, "Well, I don't want to feel what you feel." I mean, it was just hilarious. And there was another girl,
Yeah.
another woman with me, and we were just watching. And you can tell both of us wanted to interject and, be the peacemakers, but we just walked away.
Well, yeah. Yeah. No, and that's the truth because everyone's math is different. Not everybody wants to feel the same or is going to feel the same way. What you can say is like you may find it helpful, and here's this technique, or you may want to try this, or you
Yeah.
may want to feel yourself drawn to doing. Because again, even if it's the right thing, it's like letting the person come to their own conclusion that that's the right thing to do.
Hmm. Since we went down this rabbit hole, I just have to ask you, when you first started bringing this incredible, powerful work to actors and performers, what was the reaction? Were they like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for this," or it was like, I'm not so sure?
Well, I don't. I kind of do it in an indirect way. Like I would not. I wouldn't. I think most actors were getting comfortable. I said, "Hey, let me try a little hypnosis on you." I don't think so. And which is rightfully true. But if I say, well, why don't you think of it this way, or how about this way, or like even when I'm teaching my classes, sometimes they'll say, rather than saying, "I hope you find this interesting," I'll say, "I wonder when you'll find this interesting. This class, next class."
Hmm.
I'm already putting that in there, but I'm not doing it in a direct way. I'm doing a permissive roundabout way. And that's believe it or not, that's much more powerful than saying
Hmm.
you must find this interesting. Who are you? I don't think so.
Hmm.
But if you use it's like softeners to kind
Right.
of soften and warmly suggest something, because we're more likely, think about it this way: we follow commands more easily when somebody asks us nicely.
Hmm.
If you ask us nicely, we're more likely to comply. It's the
Hmm.
same thing. You just do it. I wonder when you'll find this.
Hmm.
Um, or I wonder, like for example, get a child in the room. I wonder, I'm curious. I'm wondering if you'll clean your room today, tomorrow. Maybe you want to do it, this evening. And you're still saying the same thing, clean your room,
Hmm.
but you're not doing it in a defiant way. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, it's opening
Well,
up the jest.
and it's almost like you're planting seeds. It's very gentle, and especially when you're working with adults. But it gives them their power. Like, no, it's not somebody telling me that you have to do this. And I mean, we hear this all the time. I mean, even as a physical therapist, I would hear other therapists lecturing the patient, "You have to do this, you need to do this, and do this so many times, and blah 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 blah." And it's like, oh my gosh, let's have some breathing room here.
Well, again, nobody likes to be told what to do.
Right.
Nobody. No, and that's just the way it is. I mean,
Hmm.
I know I didn't. I don't, and I'm sure 95% or even 100% of people would identify with that. I don't want to be told what to do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're naturally likely to rebel. That's why, growing up, I have seen some of my friends, even some of my family members who where the parents are very strict, and what happens? The child winds up doing what they want to do, and they wind up, the parents are strict about a certain behavior, and they actually don't realize that they actually cause that
Mm-hmm.
behavior to occur because you make it now more attractive. That forbidden act very attractive.
Not only that, it kind of reinforces itself and takes a life of its own. And yeah, good luck with that then.
Well, exactly, and that's why because I get a kick out of when I see parents, especially with of daughters, and they'll see parents saying, "Well, I'm going to keep my child. No, my child is not going to be dating any boys until they're over 18, and I'm going to send them to an all-girl school to teach them that." And I'm like, oh, and I just laughed, and I don't even say that, but I'm thinking the quiet part out loud, which is like, oh, trust me, you're going to find out the hard
Mm-hmm.
way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I grew up in a home with five girls, so I have four sisters. And yeah, my dad took karate. So that's kind of how he kept everything, you know, kept everything under control. We didn't date much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now I also wanted to ask you, you have a book, is that correct?
Yes, it's called Rise Above the Script: Confronting Self-Doubt and Mastering Self-Sabotage for Performing Artists.
Now, when I hear that subtitle, um, all I think of is, oh my gosh, if you are a performing artist, you're an actor, you're used to being on stage, and someone like, self-esteem and, self-doubt, and that to me doesn't seem to describe the personality of an artist. But of course, since they're artists, they're very good at hiding that part of themselves.
Well, most of the time, what I kind of found when I started working with actors, it's obviously not surprising anymore, but most artists are introverted,
Mm,
especially actors are very introverted. Yeah, they may be showing larger than life, performances on stage and screen, but they're doing it out of a personal fulfillment. They're not doing it for the audience, to get likes from the audience. They're fulfilling their own art, and the same thing with musicians too. A lot of musicians are introverted, and they may have the persona where they're wild. You may see them like, even sometimes hard rock or heavy metal musicians that are like, going crazy on stage and jumping around and screaming, but they're introverted a lot of times, and they're just doing a persona.
Do they have a hard time then getting themselves up on stage? Apparently they don't, or do they have to go through like a little bit of a ritual to get themselves ready for the stage?
They have to. Well, they do have a bit of a hard time initially, but
Mm-hmm.
it's all about the way they look at it. Like they're performing their art. They may not even be paying attention to the audience, really, because there's so much in their own world.
Hmm.
And that's why sometimes what fans or people find surprising is like when when the show's over or the production is over, how when you try to talk or interact, they're very shy and almost want to hide.
Mm-hmm. It's very interesting. I am a dancer. I still take ballet classes even at this advanced age. And I had had some experiences, performing and stuff, which, I loved. But it's amazing how many dancers, really skilled ballerinas, that they are so bigger than life on the stage. They could make you weep. They're so beautiful with their Swan Lake or whatever. And then as soon as the curtain closes and, the performance is over, they are just so shy. And they just kind of like, you see them in public and they can barely even speak to you. It's fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and also a lot of times they're not only they're shy, they're also private, which
Mm-hmm.
means that they, want to have their own life. They don't want to be bothered, or they don't, they're not performing. So it's kind of like they don't want to be bothered, and that's why I often kind of get the perspective, like, because I'll hear stories, oh, this celebrity was rude to a fan out in the street. I'm like, Well, did you think that maybe they didn't want to get approached on the street? That
Mm-hmm.
they're just want to get to point A to point B, or they want to have dinner with their family and be left alone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that has to be considered because it's that they're not performing, and a lot of times when
Mm-hmm.
they're performing, yeah, they're in the zone, but off they're they're different.
They're off. Like all of us
Yeah,
are. When we're at work, we perform one way and we deal with people one way. But then when we're off work and we're at home, it's completely different.
yeah, and even I laugh too because when I tell people I'm a psychologist, people are like, or I'm background in psychology, I'll hear people say, "Oh, you're going to analyze me." I'm like, "Not unless you pay me, or not unless we're in session, because I'm not working right now."
It's funny. Okay, let's go back to your book then. What made you write the book, or what was the, like trigger or the thing that said, yes, I need to do this, I need to write this, and what was the process like for you?
So the book was loosely based on my PhD dissertation, the foundation of it. My dissertation was on self-defeating behavior in performing artists. So when I first started as an agent, working with actors, the one theme that kept recurring was self-sabotage
Uh,
and self-defeating behavior, and that just kept coming up. And what I mean by that, it's like not showing up for auditions, coming up with excuses why they couldn't make auditions, not preparing fully for auditions,
mm-hmm.
acting unprofessional when it comes, on set or in the audition room. And I really couldn't figure out what was happening, but but really the theme was they were being their own worst enemy. And so I had to kind of figure out like what's really going on here. And so my my dissertation, my dissertation was on self-defeating behavior in performing artists. And so many years later, I turned into writing a book. Now, writing a book is definitely a process that, especially for a first time book author.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one thing I can say, and I'll be vulnerable in saying this, is that I kind of can lead a bit of the same life that the actors were, where I was self doubting. I kept telling people to write a book, but I never did. I never got to it. And I would start, I would sit in front of a computer, write a paragraph, not like it, delete it, and start over again.
Ooh.
Not like it, delete it, and start over again. And I would still have nothing. And it wasn't until I was part of like a mastermind program for self-published authors. And the one thing they told us is only 1% of people want to write a book. 1% of people who would say they want to write a book actually do,
Mm-hmm.
which means 99% of people who said they're going to be writing a book never do, never
Mm-hmm.
complete it. I was easily coming in at 99%. I was like, I need to flip that and become the 1%. And the second thing, and this is good for anybody who's writing something,
Mm-hmm.
the mistake to make a lot of times when you're writing something is to self-edit while you're writing.
Yeah.
That is the biggest mistake. And what you should do instead is write everything down, do like a brain dump, write everything out and complete it, and then go back and self-edit
Mm-hmm.
because you're not going to delete it then. Whereas if you write a sentence, go back to read that sentence, like, no, 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 to say that. And then therefore you delete it and you just starting and stopping and starting and stopping. So when I adopted that process, it was a game changer because I just sat, I blocked time out, which is another good task to do. Now for me, it was in the evening, so I blocked out like 90 minutes to 120 minutes a day, and the evenings, and I just wrote. I mean, I did have my dissertation as a framework, so I was like, I'm just gonna write, and I'm just gonna write for and do research and write for 2 hours. And after about 2 months, I had a manuscript.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went to an editor because I went to two different editors. I wanted to really make sure I was turning into a quality product. So I went to two different editors. The first editor, um, made a lot of great helpful changes. I implemented them. Then I went to the second editor for the changes. The one thing I will also tell anybody when you're, especially as a first time author, when you get it back from the editor, don't freak out
Right.
because For me, I think I initially did that because when I opened up the document, I cannot tell you how many red markups I saw,
Mm-hmm.
page after page. I'm like, oh no. And but then when I calmed down, I said, okay, I'm gonna calm down and I'm just gonna read each one of them. And it was like a lot of more help, so many helpful suggestions that when I implemented, I had really almost a different manuscript. And then I went to another editor who had also a lot of red markups. I did that, and next thing you know, I was, I had my book.
Well, if I could make a little comment, and this is especially for you listeners out there who might be in the process of writing a book or thinking about writing a book, make red your favorite color because you're going to see a lot of it.
Yeah, the color
Embrace the
red,
red.
just in general. Yeah, red is a really good color. We also be embracing a bit.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. So now, and going back to as you were writing the book, and this is something I know because I saw this in your bio with a lot of the people that you work with. Because, my first book, I went through this like, who am I to write a book? Imposter syndrome is
Yes,
real.
it is real and it affects everybody. And I think the biggest misconception is that it's only average people. Actually, even CEOs and high profile people and peak performers have these moments
Wow.
where it's like, oh my, why am I here?
Mm-hmm.
What it was, and that was part of me too. Like where I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I was saying to myself, am I really qualified to write this book? And another thing that was running through my head was the fear of, oh, I'm going to get all these, 1 or 2 star reviews on Amazon. No one's going to like the book. And I'm going to be winding, up at square one. And obviously, it's a fear, it's a misconception. And the one, I think the hack when I was, again, running just through the mentor in the program was he reframed, he said, so even if you do get those 1 or 2 star reviews, that might actually help sell your book even more.
Mm-hmm.
Because then people are going to be curious to see what's so bad about it. And you're going to get a handful of buyers about it. And I laughed at it. I'm like, well, yeah, okay, fine. Okay. Yeah, I give up. You're right. And also, another piece of advice is like, well, I'm like, well, I'm worried about I'm going to get negative reviews. And my mentor came back and said, well, I can tell you you're not going to get any reviews if you don't publish anything.
Mm-hmm. So now I have to ask you, and if you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, did you get a 1 star or a 2 star review?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. And podcast listeners, I'm not telling you to do that. But anyway, um, but not yet.
Okay.
I got the lowest one was a 3 star, but with
Mm,
no comment on it. I don't know. And there were two 4 star reviews that I received, and it was a very constructive
hmm.
review. But yeah, no, I haven't, and I was like, this is why I was like, this is so foolish of me. Why was I beating myself over the head over something that never going to really happen? And I, not to brag, but I do get a lot of 5 star reviews. So even if I do get some 1 or 2 star reviews, it's not going to make much of a difference in the way that I was fearful of.
If you get all 5 star reviews, that looks a little hokey. People are like, wait, I don't, yeah, is
Well,
this
then it
real?
looks
Or,
like either I got fake reviews or my
Mhm.
family, because that one thing was my family. Of course, my family and friends were like, "I'll write a review." I'm like, don't do that.
Yeah.
At first, I was like, unless you really feel compelled, okay, but really don't, because
Yeah.
um, I want it to be organic. I
Hmm.
want the reviews to be organic.
Hmm.
So
Okay. No, the one other thing I really want you to talk about, and I'm looking at the time because I know you have another commitment. But okay, I did a deep dive into your website. I told you that before we started recording. Looking at you have so many um, audio recordings of hypnosis for various different issues, problems from self-esteem, imposter syndrome, money, relationships, alcohol, anxiety, stress. I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, I need to go back because I need to get the anxiety one. I'm pretty sure. But how did you? when did you decide to do that? And how did you pick those categories of
Well, I
issues?
picked a lot of categories through what people were searching for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Mainly, people for hypnosis for three main reasons:
Mm-hmm.
food issues, addictions, and really, and anxiety. So if I kind of, started building up my library of like, okay, addictions, which is food and smoking, um, and then anxiety, and even performance. And there was like
Mm-hmm.
another thing is also performance. So athletic performance, leadership performance, public speaking, productivity, all of that stuff. And I just started doing that. And what these recordings are, these are 15 to 17 minutes. They're not long, and they're best to be listened to with earbuds or a headset. And I would do it when you have a moment to concentrate or to kind of relax. Um, I wouldn't recommend doing it when you're driving or, obviously doing anything that
Or when the
is
dogs are
requires you.
running around,
Yeah. So,
or the kids.
but yeah, so do it like when you're doing downtime. Put on your headsets and listen to them. And it's been really effective. And it's almost like having a real hypnosis session. It's the
Mhm.
next best thing.
So, Albert, if you can let us know, share with the audience how they can get a hold of you, how they could connect with you, give us some of your links, social media, website. Again, I told you all of this information is on or in the show notes, but I really like the guests to be able to articulate,
Yeah.
how they can connect with you.
Well, I really would encourage you to look at the website and look at the recordings, and definitely check out some of those recordings because they are really helpful and there's something for everybody. I would also encourage you to check out me LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, you can always reach out if you want to talk to me. I can always jump on a quick 10-minute call with you and figure out what ways that we can work together.
Mhm. Excellent. Well, before we close the show, do you have any final pearls of wisdom to leave with the listeners that they can kind of chew on for a while?
Well, I would say the biggest pearl of wisdom I would say is we all have the answers within us.
Oh,
So we all have the resources we need. And sometimes we might just need a coach or a therapist to help us tap into that. But we all have everything we need.
perfect. Albert, thank you so much for being here. I've loved this conversation. It's an
Thank
honor
you.
to meet you. And, I love the work that you're doing and keep it up. I think you're really helping an awful lot of people struggling with
Thank you,
things.
Cheryl. Thank you, Cheryl, for having me.
You are welcome. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Do go to Albert's website, look up his book. If you want to leave a review, you can do that too. He would appreciate it. Check out the recordings. They look absolutely fantastic on his website. Connect with him on LinkedIn. And I just love this. Just remember that we do have the answers within ourselves. Sometimes we just need a little help to find that. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.